and everyone is muted for background noise. If you wanted to speak, please do. Just unmute yourselves. Okay, so we're on page 286. We're going through this final accounting to cap off the second book of the Torah with the accounting of what went into building the tabernacle. Good morning, Roberta. Building the tabernacle and its accoutrements and whatever the thing that went on. I don't know. Accoutrements doesn't seem to me to be an exact word, but it's the best one I can come up with. So we read verse 24. We just didn't explain it. There's a lot of explanations are a little bit difficult to find if you just look at all the commentaries. It's very thin in these last two portions because everything that's spoken about here was already just about everything was already mentioned earlier and it was discussed there. But here, the verse, if you look just at the bolded, because we did everything already last time, it says all the gold that was used for the work and all the holy work, that is the gold of the wave offering. Wave offering, there was a lifting in a few different areas of the service in the temple. There was this idea of lifting up whatever the specific object of the service was. So the Medrash comments on this idea of all the gold that was used for the work. It all is a, I guess you could call it a modifier, but it's something that it's or an amplifier. Like what's it saying? Is it saying the gold that was used for the work? What's all the gold? So there's one of the great rabbis of the Mishnah is quoted in the Talmud, and he says in the Medrash, and he says, "What do you mean?" Good morning, Arella. We're on verse 24. So on page 286. What do you mean all the gold? Say the gold. So he takes this homiletically and says it's referring to all the gold in the universe. And his language there is that gold really shouldn't have been created. Or one could, I guess implied there is, one could make a case that God should not create gold in the world. Why was it created? For the purpose of advancing God's interest in the world, and an example of that is in the tabernacle. So, in other words, just to rephrase that a little bit, this verse is talking about gold that was used in the tabernacle. The reason it says all the gold, right? This rabbi, his name is Rabbi Shlokish. What he's saying is a rabbi of the Mishnah. He's saying is that it's referring to all the gold, the license and the basis for their existence of gold in the world is the tabernacle. And the tabernacle, as we've spoken about, is not just a specific structure in a specific place. It's the idea of how we create our lives and our homes into a tabernacle. It means a conduit, a nest for God, a nesting place for God. So this touches on a very very important, and actually other commentaries bring along, before I'll just throw this in also, it says the gold of the wave offering. So the point of the gold is the value in the gold is the wave offering. As I said, that was something that was literally you physically pick up specific objects of an offering. And the idea of the gold is that it was meant to be uplifted. And the idea here is something, let me just shut something which is making some background noise on my end. Okay. In life, I think it's probably pretty obvious to anyone who's observed life, whether their own or around, is that the attraction, the glitter of gold, or the gold as in the glittering thing, or gold as literally the seductive nature of material wealth. It's a very strong pull in people's lives, and it's something that is not easily overcome. It's a very difficult it's an attraction and a seduction and a pursuit that gets people into a lot of trouble sometimes, because who doesn't want money? It's not that you want the gold necessarily. Sometimes you want the gold, but it's the ideas of what it can buy you in physical pleasure or in prestige, or the existence of the gold, having it, wearing it, whatever it may be. So there are spiritual, moral, religious streams through the millennia who have eschewed things like gold, material needs, material objects, the beauty and the wealth, that because it is a danger, a moral danger, presents a pitfall, then that's something we've taken oath of poverty. Stay away from that. There is a point, from a Jewish perspective, there is a point to that perspective, in the sense that, of course, it is definitely an area where we need to be on guard. Our antennae have to be up and recognize that this is something that, if we follow gold as our North Star, it's going to take us into places we don't need to be, or we don't want to be, and it's not going to necessarily be a moral path. At the same time, God, as Rish Lakish, that this rabbi of the Mishnah is saying, so why would God even create this? Why would you create this obstacle course for us? And gold, again, is not just gold as opposed to silver, but gold is taken as a prime example of pursuits, physical, material pursuits, self-gratifying material pursuits. So the answer of that Rish Lakish saying is that it can be used for good. And this is a very, very critical idea. Judaism does not look down at wealth at all. Judaism does not reject the idea of gold. Judaism incorporated gold into the tabernacle, into the temple. We were not worshiping gold, God forbid, but the very setting and the setup, scripturally and then functionally, sent a very clear message to us as a people that the beauty, the physical beauty of the world, is there as an opportunity for us to use it in a way that brings more holiness to ourselves and to the world around us. So in the case of the tabernacle, where the tabernacle is considered, that is the locus, the central point of interface between us and God. And clearly that's a place when we walk in, it's not about ego, it's not about self-gratification, it's about what we can do for God and what God has designed us and charged us with doing. Gold plays a part in that, because first of all, we want it to be a place that not only is spiritually pleasing, but physically pleasing, because we're not purely spiritual beings. We have functionally, we can't deny it, a material side to us, and the material side has an appreciation, and we want to be able to appreciate it in a full sense. One of the reasons, a primary reason, that it's a mitzvah to eat a meal on Shabbos and holidays, which is physically pleasing. And that's why we say to drink wine, because the assumption is that people like wine. I personally don't, but drinking wine is considered something that's going to be pleasing to the human psyche, the human persona. Eating meat. The idea is, it's not about meat, it's not about wine, it's about having a pleasurable Shabbos, a physically, materially pleasurable Shabbos. Not being gluttonous, but having the body enjoy Shabbos. Why do we want the body to enjoy Shabbos? Because we want the body to be in sync with the soul, which should be enjoying Shabbos. And because we're bodies and souls and bodies, and because the bodily conscience is really predominant, in the sense that that's our operating, at least our consciousness, that's our default position. And then we search to be able to hear our souls and to scrape away ego and distractions to be able to have our souls take control and be resonant in our lives, and so have our visionary selves be more in the driver's seat of making our decisions. But when we get up in the morning, it's the idea is that it's us, the physical human being, and the physicality is a default position. So if that's who we are, we want to be able to be sensitive to that and bring that physicality into sync and along for the ride of enjoying spirituality. And therefore, there's a mitzvah to have a delicious meal on Friday night and Shabbos. There's no mitzvah to have a delicious meal on Tuesday evenings. Go right ahead. But it's not a mitzvah. It's a mitzvah to take care of your body and for it to be nutritious. You know, if it's delicious, it's delicious. As a matter of fact, there are two appetites following our appetites, and what looks luscious to us can also get us into trouble, at least on when it comes to the scale. But that's our own struggle with self-discipline. But Friday night and Shabbos, it's in the Hasidic world. There's a saying that Shabbos there's no calories. That doesn't translate into the scale, but it's a mindset that Shabbos, not we all bets are off, and we're not we still are want to be moral, disciplined people, but the idea is to have something that is physically pleasing because that it's Shabbos, and that we want to bring the body into this. It's very similar when it comes to gold or the other material pursuits. It's not an absolute value to have a beautiful home, but it's not an absolute value not to have a beautiful home. Having a beautiful home can have a lot of advantages to it, in the sense that, first of all, in the beauty and the expansiveness or the beauty of it, it can just elevate our own thinking and our own mood, and hopefully help us be that much more, in touch with ourselves and who we want to be. Using the home sometimes to be able to invite guests. A beautiful home can add to the beauty of the get together, or for a charity get together. People use their homes sometimes in a way that's really beautiful. In and of itself, that's not on the list of priorities. Have a beautiful home. It's have a beautiful life, a holy life. And if one has the capacity and one sees the need and is able to look at it and say, this is not just about the glittering gold, but this is something that I can use, that can be part of my march toward a meaningful life. It's a beautiful thing. Have it. So that's the gold idea. The gold idea is to be able to use it in a way that is proper, appropriate, and helps the world. The Talmud tells us something which, on the face of it, it could be a little eyebrow raising. It says that Rabbi Judah the Prince, who was definitely one of the outstanding leaders in the scope of our history, he led the Jews in a very difficult time under Roman oppression. He himself was a very wealthy person, but he was friendly with Marcus Aurelius. He was able to help the Jewish community. He's the one who put together the Mishnah, the Talmud. He was a very, very, very prominent leader in our pantheon, I guess, of leaders. And Talmud tells us he would have special respect for wealthy people. That sounds kind of shallow. His point was, if God has blessed you with resources, that means God is trusting that you use them well, that you use them to make this world more holy, because there's no question that financial resources can do a lot of good in the world, because even if a lot of well-meaning people together without the resources, they can do something, but when they have the resources, it's multiplied many, many times over, because in the real world, we have to get things done, and it costs money to get things done. So Rabbi was wealthy himself. He didn't need anybody's money. He wasn't impressed by money. And it says that he was someone who says that, before he passed away, he said, that God knows that he himself took absolutely no personal pleasure in what he had. It was all for the sake of the community or for greater good. But here, what he was respecting people. Obviously, a lot of people have a lot of money, and we can't always assume that they're making the best choices with it, right? It's hard to judge from the side, and it's not for us to judge, I guess. But the idea is that he saw in the very fact that they had a measure of wealth, a blessing from God, and a vote of confidence, saying you can do the right thing. If God didn't think you had the capacity to make good choices, why would God have given you this resource? So it's like any talent. And if this is a blessing from God, then he would respect that they had this vote of confidence from God, and he would encourage them to use it in the right way. So this is what goes on. It's in any, especially when it comes to wealth, it's not an either or black and white thing, I guess as we would say. In Judaism, these are things as what are you using it for? Or even now that we're building a shul. Of course, there are a lot of push and pull in talking about what to do, because we can make it, if economy is the only value, then we could save nice money in this construction. But economy is not the only value, because making a shul where people feel proud to be, feel drawn to come, feel that respected, that Judaism is respected, that the community respects their religion, that the non-Jewish community outside can also see that the Jewish community sees, the Jewish community respects its houses of worship. We needed to strike a balance. Obviously, finding resources is not easy, but sometimes it's worth it to find a bit extra in order to achieve something holy, which is the specific ambiance or impression that we're looking for in making something beyond just the purely functional. Because yes, it's buying gold or using gold, but it's about no one's ego. It's about the hopefully uplifting God, holiness, Judaism, and the Jewish community. So that's what this verse is interpreted as saying, is that all the gold is about the gold of the wave offerings, to be able to lift it higher. Let's take a look at, go to 25. By the way, just a thought just came to my head, because we know that the allure of gold and money is something, I guess it somewhat depends on how old you are, maybe, but it certainly is something that people have to, it serves as quite a potential pitfall for most people, if not all. A friend of mine in New York, who's a Hasidic Chabad family, and his father's in his 80s, lives in Israel, lives in Kfar Chabad, in the Chabad village there. He just told me yesterday that I guess a few months ago, maybe there was Powerball. There was a big lottery jackpot, that was, it was pretty famous. It was going around, and his father called him from Israel and asked him, "Can you buy me a ticket?" I said, "Sure, I'll buy you a ticket. I'm going to buy myself a ticket too." Then his father said to him, "When you buy my ticket, make a copy of it and send it to me, so I should see my ticket." So my friend says to him, "But you don't trust me? Why do you need to have it?" So his father said to him, "You've never yet had the trial, been in the position of having potentially millions of dollars at your fingertips just by a little white lie saying that was mine, that was yours." It was an interesting. He certainly he loves his son and he trusts his son, but the insight was that, frankly, for me, I don't have many opportunities for wealth and cheating customers and stuff like that. It's not in my just on my potential, but it's the idea. Certainly, there are opportunities that would come up, and for all of us, it is an allure. Say, well, if I just maybe go into a gray area, but it's not so wrong. Do this and get and be able to the glitter of the gold is very alluring. Okay, so we're going to go to 287. Silver from those of the community who had been counted, meaning the lay males between ages 20 and 60, came to 100 talents and 1,775 shekels of the sacred shekels, which is about 10,500 pounds. It's a lot of stuff. A beka, which is a measurement per head, which is a half shekel of the sacred shekels, for all those of 20 years and over, up to age 60, would pass through the line of those who counted in the census, which was 603,550 in all. Okay. Now on to 27. As I've said, there isn't that much commentary on all of this. The 100 talents of silver were used for casting the basis for the tabernacle and the basis for the curtain. 100 bases from 100 talents, 1 talent for each base. There are 40 bases on each side of the tabernacle, 60 on the back and 4 under the curtain. So this is functional, but there's an interesting thing here. A base. There's a Hebrew word here that means the base. This was like under the poles, the beams of the tabernacle. There was a base. So it was literally the bottom piece. It's called an aden. Aden can mean also like a threshold, something you walk over. Now, some of you may recognize that word from Adon or Adonai, which means a master. So it's pretty interesting that in the Hebrew, one second, someone wrote something on the chat. I apologize. Before I go further, I want to just answer, would you say that Judaism gives priority to the spiritual over the physical, that it balances them in the service of Hashem? Does asceticism figure into Judaism? Okay, so I'm going to answer that. Let me finish my thought, and I think we'll be able to swing into that. That's a great question. There's this balance, or the Hebrew word. It's interesting that the Hebrew word for something that you walk on is the same as one for master. So the Zohar, Jewish mysticism, makes this comment about how misleading our more normal human perceptions can be. And again, just the phraseology is, those who are great are often very small, and those who seem smaller are actually often great, which I think we can all understand. But there's an idea that often the pursuit of what we think, think about the arrogance of power. We have that, pick your day, and look at the news. What people do, and smart people do. Let me rephrase that. What smart people foolishly do in what they think is going to get them power, prestige, often totally trips them up, and they'll end up out of power, if in a sane world at least. So the idea is that there's such a trade-off and such a clear connection between the threshold and the master. If a person's goal and pursuit is not lording it over people, or being just the pursuit of power, but the pursuit of good, and recognizing that they have power or leverage and using it humbly, but recognizing that it's about the seat that they're in and trying to use it to help people, that's what will bring them prestige and power. The pursuit, if power becomes their persona and their North Star, it's almost inevitable that if either in their lifetime or afterwards, they end up more on the threshold side of things. This is a balance that we have in the words of the Talmud. A person who pursues honor has honor fleeing from that person. And when a person flees from honor, honor will pursue them. Again, it's not a cut and dry calculation, but the idea is that if, I think just in the basic psychology of things, if you're in a room with someone and that person makes it obvious that they're trying to impress you, you're not impressed. As a matter of fact, you think like the fact that they are somehow putting a stake into what you think of them means that they feel that you're kind of you're above them, that they need your approval. It doesn't work well. Keeping focus on integrity and being who we need to be for ourselves and other people is if, again, not that honor is the value, but fleeing from honor means fleeing from honor. It's really not the issue. And usually people will respect that. Chasing it, you might get, people who are hangers on, but there isn't a genuine respect. So the idea that of the question, which say the Judaism priority to the spiritual or the physical, the answer is no. They're both created by God, and there is no reason, no place to say that prayer, deep meditative prayer, is any more valuable on the holiness scale, valuable to my soul, valuable to God, than having a Shabbos meal, eating a Shabbos meal with a friend of the family, whatever, eating that piece of chicken. Obviously, you want to be conscious that it's Shabbos, but what you're having is a gefilte fish. The physicality is also godly. God created both. God is not more spiritual than physical. God is beyond both. God created spirituality. God created physicality. And we can connect with God through either of them. We connect with God wherever God opens up a door for us. If it's through lighting a match for a Shabbos candle or through meditating in prayer. It's up to God. Now, Judaism at the same time does recognize that there is a dominance to our physical personalities. That's the way we're created, and that's what comes first. As a matter of fact, at Bar and Bat Mitzvah is when we first say that the soul is coming into blossom. So, just in the human development, the normal human self-centered persona has a head start of 12 or 13 years on us, on the spiritual side. So we have souls invested in human bodies with human needs created by God. There's nothing unholy about having an appetite. There's nothing unholy about having human needs. The question is, do we guide those appetites? Do we feed them in the correct way? Do we guide our impulses in the right way? And there, there is, our question was, does asceticism figure into Judaism? I guess for the sake of accuracy, there have been ascetic streams in Judaism who were trying to spurn more of the physical. And I'm not here to knock them. That's not if there's such a thing as normative in Judaism, that's not a normative way of looking at Judaism. Judaism, I would say, certainly Chabad, but I think in general, it's fair to say that it's most mainstream or most normative to see Judaism as wanting us to exercise spirituality and self-discipline in order to make sure that we are not totally engulfed by the physicality. In the idea of Hasidic thought, it would be more that when I sit down to have lunch today, it would be me sitting down to have lunch and to eat with a purpose. And if it's with a purpose of being healthy so that I can, accomplish what I need to in the world, and maybe I'm sitting with a friend or with family, and so therefore there's a purpose also of strengthening bonds between people. That's a meal with purpose. If the purpose is I really want to eat that steak or whatever it is, and it's all about, it's not me guiding the meal. I have this is an endeavor of purpose, and for that purpose, I'm eating the steak in front of me, or whatever the food is. It's fine. If it's all about me and the physical pleasure, then I'm losing my bearings. Doesn't mean I did some sin, but morally I'm losing my bearings. And we want to stay more in control on the driver's seat of our lives, using the physicality, the material beauty and material goods towards good ends, and not being swamped by them and owned by them. So there's balance in Hasidic, in Chabad thought. There's this saying that it's when it comes to food, what we I think primarily is food. What we need, what we are prohibited from eating, we're prohibited. What we're permitted, we don't necessarily need. That sounds ascetic, but that's not the way it's meant. Fasting is not a value except when the Torah tells us to, and denying ourselves is not a value in and of itself, but controlling ourselves is a value. And if I see that I have this, when I see chocolate, I lose myself, then I should get a grip and tell myself I'm not going to have more than one piece a day, or Tuesdays are going to be no chocolate day, whatever, just to get a grip on myself. That's fine. It doesn't mean chocolate's treif, and I shouldn't make chocolate treif. And it would be wrong of me to say chocolate's treif. If it's kosher, it's kosher. But if it's a weakness for me, then I should get a grip, because it's not about my weight as much. It could be that too, because that's also a value when it comes to health. But it's really about who's driving the bus of our lives. And if it's us and we are engaging the world and guiding the world in a meaningful direction, that's the way it should be. If it's us chasing the world and the world owning us, and there's something glittering in that direction, so I want it. Something looks great in this direction, so I want it. So then I don't have a North Star except for self-indulgence. It's not a healthy way to live, spiritually healthy way to live, or physically. So I hope I kind of addressed that. Okay, verse, if I didn't, let me know, but verse 27. Oh no, we just did verse 27. So now verse 28. With his 1,775 shekels, he made hooks for the pillars of the courtyard, overlaid the tops and banded them. The people donated much additional silver beyond the mandatory half shekel. The copper of the wave offering came to 70 talents and 2,400 shekels. By the way, this is all an accounting, and part of this is that even Moses is not beyond an accounting. And the Talmud talks about it, that Moses was Moses. These are people who, not even a year before this, they had heard God at Mount Sinai saying that Moses, we could trust Moses with everything. And they knew that. And they'd experienced everything with the golden calf. They knew Moses was, top of the line spiritual. When it came to money, they said, one second. The Talmud says, he's looking a little heavy. I think he's eating a little bit better. That they started to suspect. And Moses had to give an accounting. That's what it's accounting is boring, but that's what this part of what this accounting is about, is Moses putting out all his cards on the table, what was done with the gold and the silver and everything else. The copper of the wave offering came to 70 talents and 2,400 shekels. With it, he made the basis for the screen at the tent of the meeting, the copper altar, it's copper grate, all the altar's utensils. The basis for the pillars of the courtyard, all around the basis for screen at the entrance of the courtyard, all the stakes of the tabernacle, all the stakes of the courtyard for the courtyard all around. But the laver was made from the copper mirrors the women donated, as described above. When we went into that, and it's kind of related to what we said before also, about beauty, physical, human beauty. For some people, it's vain, it's shallow, but it doesn't have to be that. What if the beauty is there? To be able to add glue to a relationship. That's beautiful. Do it. And that's how. And these lavers, when the women were trying to introduce a more marital connection within their homes during the slavery in Egypt, when the last thing they were thinking about was they were just scraping for survival, and they wanted to try to bring some of the beauty of the relationship and harmony and connection and romance into their lives. That was a beautiful, beautiful thing. So those mirrors, those copper mirrors, were made into the lavers. With the turquoise, purple, and scarlet wool, they made the netted packing cloths for use in the tabernacle, and also made iron sacred garments, as God had commanded Moses. So there, in this Torah portion, there are going to be 18 times that the Torah has that phrase, as God had commanded Moses, because a lot of things were done. Remember, God commanded Moses a couple of Torah portions ago, and now everything is being recapped, and everything was this was as God had commanded. This was as God had commanded Moses. It says it 18 times. So our Medrash tells us that the 18 times correspond to the 18 blessings of the Amidah. On a average day, say like this morning, this afternoon, this evening, we actually, every time we have a prayer service, the centerpiece is what's called the Amidah. Every day of the year, every time, any prayer service. Now the Amidah it's focused. We say it audibly, but to ourselves, and it's a very focused time. And it's a time of deep connection with God. Today, there are actually 19 blessings. But the way it was designed, there were 18 blessings. And it became known, if in the observant hood, the Amidah is not called the Amidah, it's called the Shmona Esrei. Shmona Esrei means 18. And you say it even on Shabbos when there isn't 18 blessings. That's just become the vernacular for an Amidah. It's Shmona Esrei. Now, because there were 18 blessings there, one was added a little later, so it became 19. But I don't want to get too picky about it. So 18 is the 18 blessings. The Medrash tells us refers to the 18 blessings, because the Amidah, our prayer, is a time for us to have our personal tabernacle. Just as the tabernacle was a venue for a very focused, palpable connection with God. We have that opportunity in life, but at a more heightened opportunity when we pray. I'm going to say with the Amidah. And just as the Amidah, and to the question we said before, the Amidah is not just about meditative things and theological, thinking about the infinite. It's talking about God in our lives. We're asking God for success in business. We're asking God for success in our physical health. We're asking God for physical lives. Our material lives are front and center in the Amidah. But it's not our material lives are saying that listen, God, now that I have your attention, I need this, and this, because I need. It's really about us feeling that our lives are about being who God created us to be. And if therefore there's a blend. It's sure I have these material things, sure I need these material things, but I don't need them for me. I need them for something larger than me. I have to take care of my family, take care of myself, of course, because God needs me to. God needs me to take care of me. God needs me to take care of my family. God needs me to take care of my community. God needs me to be of service to the world. And the only way I can be of service to the world is if I take care of myself. But it's all about being who God created me to be. And therefore, the tabernacle and the Amidah, they both articulate that idea, and it goes back to the question actually before. It's that there's this blend of the two. Yesterday I was telling someone, without giving names, years ago I was with a very well-known leader, I guess, in the Jewish community. He was extremely wealthy and very extremely philanthropic. Not an observant guy per se, but he passed away a while ago. He was a Holocaust survivor. Rebuilt his family, and he had and very well rebuilt his family. But he saw it as a mandate to try and rebuild the Jewish people after what he saw in the Holocaust when he got here. So I was just telling someone, my father met with him. I was probably in my high 20s, low 30s, and they were talking. We're sitting in his office, and he was talking about Jewish community things, and they started talking a little bit about his business and something about one specific. I think it must have been a piece of property he had that was a little challenging. And then I don't remember all the details of the conversation, but I do remember he turned to me, he gave a little smile, and he said, "They don't sell Jewish assets." And I laughed. But then, then he turned back to talk to my father. But I was thinking then, he wasn't talking about Jewish assets. He was talking about his assets, and he's got a lot of them. And so it was really, he was talking about his, I guess some business strategy. But he didn't say that. I think, at some level, of course, he did very well for himself and his family. God bless them. But he saw his success as necessarily being a Jewish community success, and I think his actions showed that, and the things he's done and his family still does. But he would even use that expression to me, Jewish assets. They're not Jewish assets; they're assets of a Jew, unless he saw them in a different way. That as he wanted to make sure that Jews did well and were able to take care of themselves, and he was doing his bit in making sure to maintain Jewish assets. Just a thought. Okay, so now let's just do. Maybe we can finish the page. Making the ephod. The ephod is it was like an apron almost, and on top of that was the there was a stones. There's a language I'm trying to think. There's a word I'm thinking for, but the stones of judgment. We'll get to that in a second. The Torah now resumes the account of how the artisans made the tabernacle and its accoutrements, or they used accoutrements too, continuing with the priestly garments. The artisan made the ephod out of threads composed of 28 strands, 4 gold threads. So there were threads of actual gold. 1 twined with 6 threads of turquoise wool, 1 twined with 6 threads of purple wool, 1 twined with 6 threads of scarlet wool, 1 twined with 6 threads of twined linen. So now let's look. There's one of the Chassidic insights, one of the few in this Torah portion. It says he made the ephod, the bottom. It says most of this parsha, most of this Torah portion, deals with the tabernacle as a whole, and specifically how it was erected, anointed, and began to function as an unearthly abode for the divine presence. So this Torah portion, it's the actualization of doing what God had said of creating the tabernacle. In this context, the description of how the priestly vestments were made would seem to belong to the previous parsha, Vayakel, which describes how the individual components of the tabernacle were made. Last Torah portion had more the individual pieces, and this is more about the tabernacle. Why does the priestly garments end up over here? The reason that the description of how the priestly vestments were made is nonetheless included in this parsha is that they were not technically accoutrements of the tabernacle per se. Rather, they're the means by which the priests are imbued with the holiness required to perform their tasks. Inasmuch as it is these tasks, the priestly rites, that cause God's presence to be continuously revealed in the tabernacle, the description of the priestly vestments is included here rather than together with the description of how the tabernacle and its furnishings were made. I don't think they did a very, you tell me, I don't think it's very clearly articulated. So let me just tell you what they're trying to say because of where the source says. Again, I told you the last 2 Torah portions of the book of Exodus are like Siamese twins, pretty much, or twins. They're both recap, and the first one is more about the things that God told us to build, the menorah, the altar, and this is more about the tabernacle. The priestly garments are a bit different than all the things that the articles, the components that are described in the last Torah portion. Take the menorah. There's a mitzvah to make a menorah. So just creating it, if there's the divine scoreboard of 630 mitzvahs, check, I made the menorah. Then there's a mitzvah to light the menorah, a separate thing. And when we light it within the tabernacle, and we're totally aligned with everything, that draws down special holiness to the world. That goes from all the components, each one individually, and what they brought to the table, described in the last week's Torah portion, the prior Torah portion. The priestly garments are not the same, because the priestly garments, actually, there's no mitzvah to make them. There's not even a mitzvah to wear them. What God says is that when, in order for the functionaries in the temple, in order for them to be properly aligned, to be able to be conduits for a divine blessing to the world, they need to have A, B, C, and D. So they don't have any distinct value outside being just purely conduits for bringing blessing to the world. There is no, the menorah, if there's a mitzvah for me to make a menorah, I'll make it. God wants it, good, wonderful. Doesn't mean I have to light it. There's a mitzvah for me to light it too. Mitzvah to do it in the tabernacle, you follow the rule book. Since all the things that were in the prior Torah portion were components of the tabernacle which deserve to be addressed and to be created and constructed as individual mitzvahs, and then used in the tabernacle to draw down godliness from God. So first we deal with that in last week's Torah portion, the actual construction, fulfilling God's directives about making this or that. And then this Torah portion is fundamentally about, as we'll end of the Torah portion with, is God finally rested among the people. It's all about bringing God's presence to the world. So first, get your job done, and then in this Torah portion, we'll use the things we made to bring God's presence to the world. The priestly vestments, there was nothing to make. The only reason to make them, the only discharging of a mitzvah, the only place they have is as conduits for God. Since they were not individual mitzvahs. They are not creating the vestments, those clothing did not fulfill a mitzvah. And according to most opinions, even wearing them didn't fulfill the mitzvah. The Kohen, through being, touching all the bases and then doing what God wanted out of him in the service, in helping God's presence come to the world, that was the mitzvah. That's what they're trying to say here, based on what they use as their source. I just don't think to hit the mark with the English, but they're really good. So no one bets 1,000. I think we'll leave it over here, unless there are any questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Be well.
Thank you. Thank you.
Be well. Have a great week. Bye.